Bleach is pretty good. I thought it was cool as a teenager, when I was drinking it. Obvious jokes aside, it was cool then, and I still think it's cool now. They say growing up is learning what you liked as a kid was rubbish, but I think growing up is learning what you liked as a kid still rocks. Penned by mangaka Tite Kubo, Bleach tells the story of Ichigo Kurosaki. He can see dead people. One day, when his family is put into danger, he gains the power to protect them by becoming a Soul Reaper. He starts off reluctant to use those powers, but he soon discovers that his desire to keep people safe and his passion for fighting draws him into a seemingly endless battle against the gods of heaven, the demons of hell, and just about everything in between. For well over a decade, the franchise was essentially dead, but in recent years it's gone from strength to strength. The anime was recently revived, a special short series was made based on Bleach's follow-up, Burn the Witch, and while I was making this video, a new Bleach game for consoles and PC was announced. And a new mobile game. I shall assume you already know what a tier list is, so we're just going to get on with it. Oh, and we are going in Japanese release date order. Without further ado, let's do this. We have made it to 2005, the first year of Bleach video games. There were 5 released in this year alone, targeting each of the then current platforms. It is no wonder this video seems so bleached. Oh sorry, I had the camera and brightness up. We have 2 PSP titles, a Game Boy Advance game, a PlayStation 2 title, and a GameCube entry. For context, 2005 is the last year of the 6th generation of video game consoles, and right before the Nintendo Wii's release. Keep that in mind when we look at each of these titles, some of them feel quite modern for the time. I had previously covered this game on Sushi Bites, however the episode is from 6 years ago and does not match my slightly improved quality standards of today, so I have reworded and re-recorded the entire segment. Bleach Heat the Soul is a one-on-one fighting game developed by A-Ting, the creators of Bloody Roar, and is the first entry in this 7-game sub-series released exclusively for the PSP, and only in Japan. The game opens with a specially made animated sequence set to the anime's first opening song, Asterisk, performed by Orange Range. The opening sets the scene for when the game takes place, but shows many characters who do not actually appear within the game itself's standard modes, possibly due to time constraints, or to get the game out the door quickly, perhaps to capitalize on the PSP's growing success. There are 5 playable characters: Ichigo, Rukia, Orihime, Uryu, and Chat. There is a 6th unlockable character as well, Renji Abarai, unlocked by collecting enough cards. More on that later. The roster is smaller than even the first Tekken or Virtua Fighter, but Heat the Soul makes up for it with its presentation, without a doubt. The menus are presented as slick graffiti artwork sprawled across a brick wall. The character selection screen shows each character walking down a street's side profile. This is all reminiscent of the anime's first opening sequence, which shows care was given to how this game was presented. Everything has that punky, rebellious style you associate with delinquency, and with Bleach itself, especially in its early chapters. Heat the Soul's presentation lends to it popping off the PSP screen, with bright colours and beautiful on-model visuals. It runs smoothly at a consistent frame rate and feels responsive. This is a traditional fighting game. Whittle down the enemy's health and you win. Despite that being the ultimate goal of any fight, the outcome of each fight is ultimately dictated by the soul gauge. Just like in the universe of Bleach, someone's soul pressure dictates how much damage they can deal, how hard they are to cut, how quickly they can move. So during a fight, attention must be shown to the soul gauge. Attacking enemies will raise this, as well as using square to successfully assert your soul pressure. Getting hurt or failing to hit someone with a special move will cause it to drop. In other words, the more the soul gauge tips in your direction, the greater your damage output, resistance to taking damage, reach of your attacks, etc. Parts of the soundtrack are user culture-laden beats containing samples I swear I've heard in fast food commercials in the 90s. Any of the in-game menu or fighting music I would consider excellent. The battle music can be all over the place, but the mixture of samples suits the game well. Each of the 6 playable characters have moves that are not entirely accurate to the source material, likely due to how little information would have been available at the time, even if they were able to communicate with Tite Kubo directly to answer any questions they might have had. However, I feel that a good trade-off between what is accurate and what is fun to play has been met. Unfortunately, because Rukia had only been seen in her Gigai, or fake body, up to this point in the show, her moves are mostly based around Kido, and as a result, what should be one of the more interesting characters ends up being potentially the weakest. If you're considering checking this game out, I think it's important to note that this game does not enable autosave by default. I lost an hour's progress to this the first time I tried to play Heat the Soul, so either make sure to turn this on or remember to save before powering off. This is typical of all Heat the Soul games, so remember to check that setting before tucking into any of them. Now, up until this point, everything I've said has been rather positive, but Heat the Soul does have one thing I'm not particularly keen on: the unlock system. Winning matches earns you points, and these points can be spent on cards. You unlock something new for every 10 unique cards you collect. Because there are 134 cards to collect, and you can pick up cards you already have, unlocking features is naturally quite time-consuming. I understand why the game was developed this way. It was so players would remain invested in the game and keep playing it until the sequel was released, which was later in the same year. You can enter passcodes, but they give measly rewards for the effort it took to track them down. Of course, these days I just simply recommend grabbing a completed save or using memory cheats. The game's coolest piece of content is locked behind collecting at least 100 cards, and I wouldn't begrudge anybody for cheating to get to it. And that unlockable? Lock On. A combination of Atari's 1976 smash hit, Breakout, and the Bleach franchise. It is played by rotating the PSP 90 degrees counterclockwise. Players must destroy all of the blocks to clear the screen, and there are 3 screens per level. To help them complete their goal, certain blocks contain power-ups such as multi-ball, lasers, or piercing balls. If there are only a few blocks left, the game will sometimes take pity on you and release multiple balls, which I appreciate. Certainly a weird little extra, but not worth the effort to unlock legitimately. Completing each level unlocks the background artwork for the gallery, which contains many fan-favourite characters who don't appear until the 2nd or 3rd season. Heat the Soul is a generic yet solid first entry in not only the Heat the Soul sub-series, but the Bleach video game series as a whole. Heat the Soul will get better over time, as more features and characters are added. But as this first one stands, it's an easy recommendation to old Bleach fans who are rereading the manga, or new fans who are watching the show from the beginning. With the PSP being region-free, that's as good a reason as any to grab a copy. With the traditional survival modes, arcade modes, time attack modes, wireless local multiplayer to sink your teeth into, as well as many more unlockables in the form of sound effects, image galleries, and a radio con short, where Orihime's boobs give Kon a nosebleed, it is easy to recommend to Bleach fans. Bleach Heat the Soul goes into C tier. The Game Boy Advance title, Kurenai ni Somaru Soul Society, is a fighting game that takes place from a first-person point of view. The game begins with Rukia's disappearance, as the first battle is against Ururu as part of Ichigo's training to restore his Soul Reaper powers. This places it at the tail end of Season 1, and it leads into the events of Season 2. Bleach Advance is kind of like... Have you ever played Resident Evil Gaiden? It's like that, mixed with rock, paper, scissors. You have attacks that are either sword, fist, or I guess fireball type, and these are all either effective or not effective against other types of attacks. You can use these attacks yourself, but you also need to defend against them as well. I don't understand the gameplay at all. I didn't really try to be perfectly honest, as I could only stomach losing to Ururu twice before hanging this one up. Normally I'd be okay with a cutie like Ururu walking all over me, dominating me, crushing me under her bare feet. I'm just not in the mood for that today. What I can appreciate, though, is the impressive amount of art packed into this title, big character portraits with lots of detail, lots of voice clips. Kurenai ni Somaru Soul Society pushes the Game Boy Advance to its limits with its 32MB file size, usually only seen for 2-in-1s and video cards. I wish I had more to say about this, but it just did not gel with me. If I could win at least one fight, I'd probably place this a bit higher. Into the F tier it goes. If that placement seems unfair, then maybe it is. I just thought the game felt a little hollow. Erabareshi Tamashii is a fully 3D hack-and-slash action game with a 3D camera, oh boy, camera, not too dissimilar from Onechanbara. You can select one of 5 characters from the outset, Ichigo, Chad, Uryu, Rukia, or Orihime. Then you slash your way through enemies as you clear the streets of Karakura, drop into Rukongai, and further beyond. This is a hack and slash that, for some reason, completely lacks a lock-on function. The game it is clearly trying to copy, Tamsoft's Onechanbara, did have a lock-on, right? I'm not misremembering, am I? In trying to keep the characters' attacks faithful, they've done a terrible job of actually making them fun to use or making them effective. The camera is, for some reason, flipped on the horizontal axis with no way to change it. My recommendation on emulator would be to create a game-specific config and map the right stick backwards. Trust me, it's better that way. You can switch your characters with the select button, dash with L1, block with R1, and there's a combo feature if you press X, where you can tag in your teammate. If you keep the combo going, by tapping square as the orbs cross over the word combo, and by occasionally tapping X to switch your teammate to keep the opponent airborne, you use up your tag bar, but deal a lot of damage. If you get the combo bar full and press circle at the end, you can activate a special finisher that does a metric ton of damage. Some of these have FMVs to go along with them. There is some depth to Erabareshi Tamashii, and I'm sure the game will eventually open up, but for some reason you cannot replay previous stages, which is just kind of shit, really. Especially in this kind of action game with linear stages. I was hoping to grind some stats or something. You soon get an opportunity to pick stage order, but that's kind of redundant in a game like this. Some of the missions will see you having to face off against a large number of respawning enemies, others require you to take out bigger enemies, or the smaller ones will endlessly regenerate. There are boss fights against other Shinigami. I have fought against Kisuke, Rangiku, Renji, Toshiro, and I'm sure there are many others. According to the back of the box, all these characters seem to be unlockable at some point, but I didn't have the patience to play this for more than a couple of hours. I keep holding out hope that someone is secretly chipping away at an English translation patch for this one. That may well rekindle my interest in what is otherwise a sort of, well, mid-game? I didn't get very far in this game for a very long time. You see, the fourth mission has this out-of-nowhere difficulty spike where you have to fight a Menos Grande. This thing can shoot lasers, teleport around, and bash its head down on you. The only way to beat the Mocha Grande Dunkachino here is to complete several cycles of dodging and blocking until it presents its weak point for all of about 5 seconds. A very slow and painful chipping away at the boss's health later, after about 10 minutes, it's dead. Just to give you an idea, I've been stuck on this boss for the last 15 years, and look, here it is dead. I'm happy to say I beat it, and if it wasn't for this tier list, I probably wouldn't have. But I have to give each game a fair shake, except for the games later on that don't get a fair shake, or that GBA game we just covered that didn't get a fair shake. You know what, forget I said anything. The variety of gameplay, visuals, and music very much saves the game from going into a lower tier. Erabareshi Tamashii is a C-tier game, if only because it gives you access to 5 characters off the bat, each with their own attacks and assists, and lets you go up against hordes of enemies in familiar BLEACH locales. It is a long way from being a game I can recommend to everyone, but collectors and BLEACH fans will probably want to play this one, provided of course that you have a console capable of running the game, or rip an ISO to play in an emulator. It's good enough to give it a go, but maybe not compelling enough to fully complete.
For BLEACH Heat the Soul 2 segment, I am reusing a segment from Sushi Bites episode 103, where I previously covered the game. As they say, work smarter, not harder. If you've seen this episode, and do not wish to watch it again, please skip to the next entry.
Heat the Soul 2 story mode is more involved this time, with more playable characters. Playing as the main character Ichigo Kurosaki, or one of his many ridiculous friends, has you battling against the various Soul Reapers who stand in his way on their quest to rescue the weak and useless, feeble, pathetic waifu Rukia Kuchiki. Meanwhile, picking a big bad such as Byakuya or Gin has you attempting to stop Ichigo and his friends from succeeding. While this mode has definitely been elaborated on, the caveat is that it no longer contains the brilliant what-if scenarios from the first game. Heat the Soul 2 is clearly built off the first game and reuses a lot of assets. Not a surprise considering this game came out merely 6 months after the first. At least in these 6 months they managed to upgrade the roster so there are now 12 characters in total rather than 6. From the original game we have Ichigo, Rukia, Orihime, Uryu, Chad, and Renji. The new characters are Byakuya, Gin, Kisuke, Toshiro, and hidden unlockable character Yoruichi. Well, there is one other unlockable character, but it's just the basic version of Ichigo that appeared in the first game. This is what we in the industry call a wasted slot. The game's most awful addition, without a doubt, is Gotai 13 mode. This takes upwards of 910 battles to complete, and is a massive, unappreciative time sink. Luckily, there are passwords you can input to unlock everything. Or you could just download a save file. I certainly won't begrudge you for doing this. It's an unloving waste of effort. In fact, I'd probably judge you if you took the time and effort to do it properly. Oh, look at this guy wasting all his time on Gotai 13 mode. Oh, look at him. Yeah, if I'd known about cheat codes back then, I wouldn't have done it all myself, which I did. The unlockable cards continue to be a thing. It now takes 200 cards to unlock Block-On. But with a new stage selection in that mode, the time spent on getting cards is, dare I admit it, justified. Unfortunately, it's still mostly the same guff, the same unlocks, the same art gallery, same sound test and same crap we had in the first game. In one sense, Heat the Soul 2 should have been the first game released, as the content we have here merely patches a few holes in the first game. But then again, if you were a fan of the show, you'd have lapped this all up, no hesitation, like I did. As with the first game, the main obstruction is the story mode. If you've watched the show, you have a rough idea what's happening in the story, so it won't really be an issue. Besides that, a little menu memorization and you're golden, as yet again a large chunk of the game's menus are already in English. Despite how easy it is to pick up and play, I think, again, this is a game for the serious series fans only. All I need to say to fans of the series is, Yoruichi makes her playable debut. That's reason enough to play, right? It's a mostly disappointing retread of the first, but if you were looking for a good polished entry to jump in and try, this is better than starting off at the beginning, but the third entry in this series is even better, and the perfect jumping in point for new players.
Heat the Soul 2 goes into B tier. The new characters are fantastic additions, and the embellishment of story mode makes the game a fantastic companion to the anime's second season. The large number of unlockables provide a huge amount of replay value, but as with the first Heat the Soul, it's a game for series fans first, and newcomers second. This is another hollow entry. For the Tasogare ni Mamieru Shinigami segment, I am reusing Sushi Bites episode 102, where I previously covered the game. If you've seen this episode before and do not wish to see it again, feel free to skip to the next entry.
It was released for the GameCube in December of 2005, exclusively in Japan, developed by Polygon Magic. This game is a one-on-one fighter, with 2D gameplay mechanics but taking place in a 3D space, meaning you can sidestep your opponent's attacks. As with most fighting games, the goal is to whittle down the enemy's health while avoiding losing yours. It's a one-on-one fighter. Come on. Do you want me to explain how it works? BLEACH GC utilizes the soul mechanics from the show, allowing you to build up your Reiatsu, or spirit pressure if you prefer, to stun an enemy. When an enemy is stunned, they will move at half speed, allowing you to line up your special moves a lot easier, or just pummel them silly. You have access to 2 special moves for each character, and an ultimate skill. These require different amounts of spirit power to use, and the handy chart in the bottom corner tells you at any time which abilities you have enough power to use. One really cool thing about this game's ultimate moves is that they have cut-in FMV for when they're used. The downside, however, is that all the ultimate moves basically act the same. Still, each of the game's characters has an ultimate skill, which can't be said for the Heat of the Soul series, where many characters don't have release forms to use. The story of Bleach's second and third seasons is told in the form of the game's scenario mode, featuring 3 scenarios that cover different characters' perspectives of the events from the 2 seasons. The first scenario follows main character Ichigo Kurosaki and his crew, as they travel through the Soul Society, the land of gods, so to speak, on their quest to rescue their good friend Rukia, who has been wrongfully sentenced to execution. The second scenario focuses on Renji Abarai, friend of the aforementioned Rukia, who is struggling to determine the right course of action regarding his imprisoned friend. The last scenario follows the events from the perspective of Byakuya Kuchiki, the brother of Rukia, whose eagerness to make promises has landed him in a circumstance where one will have to be broken. The scenarios are split into fights punctuated by fully voiced cutscenes. Though the story is told with mostly still images and some basic movement, they are at least accompanied by the show's excellent music. The scenarios follow the show well for the most part, deviating here and there for the sake of adding extra gameplay, or tiptoeing around the game's lack of assets for certain scenes. If you can understand Japanese, you will experience a serviceable, basic digestion of the show's events, though I would certainly hate for you to have the fantastic second and third seasons of Bleach told to you in such a basic manner. Seriously, go watch the show. There are 25 playable characters, though 2 have alternate forms, which are also unlockable. An impressive roster, over double what Bleach Heat the Soul 2 had managed 3 months prior. Each character's special moves are based on what they have in the animated series and the manga. Characters such as Aizen, Kaname, and Saijin had yet to have their visuals for the anime nailed down, which is why they all look a little bit off-model compared to the show. Saijin most notably appears grey instead of orange, but we'll let that slide because they didn't have any idea what colour he was supposed to be at this point. Outside of the scenario mode are your typical versus modes, an arcade style mode, and a 13 combatant survival mode. Beating the arcade mode or survival mode will unlock other characters and artworks to peruse in the game's extra mode. And each character's 3D model is also available for viewing in the extra mode once they're unlocked. A few of the hidden characters can also be unlocked by punching in some cheat codes in the password mode, which are on screen now. Also worth noting, the game has a lesson mode, where you can play through tutorials or set up a practice match. Not all fighting games have this, so I gotta give credit where it's due. While the game certainly isn't all too impressive to look at now, I still appreciate the accuracy in recreating the environments and characters featured in Bleach. While certainly not high-end by GameCube standards, the cel-shaded aesthetic would have looked incredibly appealing on an old CRT television, and still holds up today. Bleach GC would be the only Bleach game to land on GameCube. Bleach GC will satisfy any itch you have to see the characters from the Bleach franchise in a traditional style fighting game on console. In terms of convenience, provided you have a freeloader disc, Bleach GC can be fired up in mere seconds on a GameCube, and played both single and multiplayer. When it comes to console fighting games, this is the only Bleach game that you can just fire up and play, without finicky controller settings, motion controllers, or sensor bars. For a game released so early in the history of the Bleach franchise, Tasogare ni Mamieru Shinigami is a worthwhile addition to any GameCube import collection, regardless of whether you're a fan of Bleach or not.
Tasogare ni Mamieru Shinigami goes into the D tier. The story mode and unlockable characters are quite fantastic. It's also a plus whenever we get an opportunity to play as the real Kaien Shiba. Unfortunately, it's not a particularly deep game, and a lot of its elements are recycled and rehashed between the characters. Where it gains credit for being a solid 2-player fighting game, to say it stands out as quintessentially Bleach is simply impossible.
Here we are in 2006, the year of the Nintendo Wii's release worldwide. This year would see Bleach's first release on the system, an entry for the Nintendo DS, a PlayStation 2 title, and a PSP title. This year would also see 3 of these games released in languages other than Japanese, allowing more of the world to play them, though this happened in years following their Japanese releases. Blade of Fate is the first Bleach game on this list to receive an official English language release, and the first Bleach game developed by Treasure. It's rather funny to me that Treasure was formed by ex-Konami developers who got tired of making endless sequels and reiterations of older games, but they worked on Bleach, which has already shown itself to be no stranger to rapid, similar releases. It should come as no surprise then that they were hired to make a sequel to this game as well. But is there any treasure among the DS Bleach games they developed? And that's what we're all here to find out, right? So the structure of this game is nuts and completely counterintuitive, and that's kind of what makes it so interesting. Initially, the game's story mode sees you playing as Ichigo Kurosaki, trying to rescue Rukia from the Soul Society. However, similar to how Treasure's previous game Astro Boy The Omega Factor works, you've got a game that feels like half a game that you're forced to navigate in an untoward maze-like fashion. Essentially, each of Ichigo's story fights have a secondary secret completion goal that affects which way you progress through the story, with each one vaguely hinted at by the characters through their dialogue. As you fail to discover these paths and end up fighting the same characters again, they will comment on this in a fourth-wall-breaking fashion, criticizing the insanity of the game's structure and trying to understand the mess of the game they are in. It gets to a point where characters will stop you from being able to take incorrect paths because they're getting bored of fighting you over and over again, breaking the game's own rules with flagrant disregard for the nonsensical game structure they're being forced to adhere to. So to complete Ichigo's story, you must defeat each of these bosses on the multiple routes, finally achieve your Bankai form, and defeat Byakuya. Once you do this, smaller stories open up for each of the game's playable characters, and these also result in unlocking more stories and secret characters in the process. The game is a fairly standard one-on-one fighter, but with card mechanics which usually turn me off in these kinds of games. These spirit cards can do things like recover health, drain everyone's special move bars, stop the opponent from jumping. There's a whole range of weird things they do. You can only pick from 2 random cards at any one time, which really makes it feel like it's too reliant on luck. To quell that, you can customize up to 5 decks, and pick which one you want to use, lettered A through E. You can even switch your deck at any time during the story by going down to the settings screen, but you can only customize it from the main menu. You can have as many cards of any one type as you like, you just can't exceed the upper limit of total cards. A deck full of attack cards, recovery cards, or a mixture, the choice is yours. It no longer feels like luck if you put in just the cards you want and customize each deck to meet the different win conditions. Learning how to pull off special moves, figuring out which cards best suit your playstyle, all these things, plus the quite funny writing as you watch the main cast bashing their heads against the weird, repeating purgatory they're stuck in, all results in making Blade of Fate a noteworthy title. While I don't particularly enjoy its bullshit structure, it's typical Treasure in that regard. They seldom ever follow game design rules, and that's what makes their titles so memorable. I don't know why the game bothers to offer a password option at the shop. I've tried for ages to get it to register any of my passwords. The information available online as to what the passwords are is from almost 2 decades ago, and they're draw the shape of this, or whatever. Draw Zangetsu! How vague, that could be a sword, or the old man himself. The game's challenge mode is completely indicated combo, and come on, I have no idea what I'm looking at here. It resembles the map out of a Metroidvania, not a combo. There's the standard training and arcade modes too. Blade of Fate really seems like a complex fighter for people who can get their head around it, but that's not me. As for whether I could enjoy Blade of Fate today, that's not so easy to say. Bleach fans will enjoy how much it simultaneously follows the universe's rules and also flat out disregards them. The deep cut of playable character choices, such as unlockable Tatsuki, and the absolutely banging soundtrack that sadly languishes on the Nintendo DS with its poor sound quality. It was difficult to place this, and I know my decision will upset some viewers, sorry Stu, but this one is a high C tier at most. I had rated this higher just after putting it down, but I woke up on the wrong side of bed this morning, so I'm lashing out for attention. Blade of Fate is by no means bad, in fact very enjoyable, but also contains a mixture of what I consider to be both good and bad game design elements. If you think I put it in the wrong place, why not tell me in the comments below? Hanatareshi Yabou is quite interesting. This is a JRPG through and through. You run through screens, fighting enemies, and following the story as you go. There's a map marker to tell you where to go, and if there isn't, you're in the wrong area. It's quite playable even with the Japanese text-based language barrier. This title kind of reminds me of Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2, with its illustrated backgrounds combined with cel-shaded character models. This is a very gorgeous game from a presentation standpoint, and it's great to see places and characters from Bleach replicated so faithfully. For 2006 on PlayStation 2, this is about as good as a game like this can look. Hanatareshi Yabou starts by loosely adapting the events from the game's first season, but adds a new villain and some twists. It begins with Ichigo and Rukia setting out to defeat a hollow that they have received a call about on the communicator, but soon an unusual amount of hollows start appearing. Before long, characters such as Hanataro and Kenpachi start showing up in Karakura Town, and the whole timeline gets messy. Better to treat this as a what-if kind of experience. For this reason, a fan translation would not go amiss. It's honestly a surprise this never got a localization at the time, not even in America. I have no doubts it would have sold well. I blame this game coming out during that PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3 transitional period. Being something of an alternate timeline, you wouldn't have needed to be following the anime all that closely in order to enjoy it, perhaps making this a good starting point for those interested in checking the series out. Again, gutted this hasn't had a translation yet, official or otherwise. So it's a traditional JRPG, but with Bleach flavor. While running around Karakura, there are plenty of spirits to purify using Konsho. Each spirit you purify drops an item or accessory, so it's worth doing that whenever you can. The game starts out pretty difficult in the first half hour before easing up, so performing every Konsho is something of a must. The battles use a formation system that only allows characters at the front to attack with melee, whereas characters from the back can use ranged attacks, defend, or use items. This means you're probably going to keep your melee fighters at the front and your ranged attackers at the back. There's some kind of timed hit feature that I don't completely understand, but it's something like this. When a white circle appears around your character while they're attacking, press the circle button at just the right time to trigger this game's equivalent of a limit break. Pressing the circle button again, this time when the orb is at the closest to the center of the line, deals the most damage. There are single-use items that will boost a character's stat permanently, kind of like vitamins in Pokemon or tabs in Chrono Trigger. These are scarce, and I'm pretty sure I wasted them all on Ichigo, but considering he's the main character, it felt like the right move at the time. I would genuinely love to put more time into this title, as it seems like an extremely faithful recreation of Bleach's vibe, while delivering a weird, off-the-rails story. It's kind of like a playable filler arc in some ways. Judging by the box art, we'll even get to unlock Ichigo's Bankai, but I'm not playing that far in Japanese. A lot of the game is voice acted, so if you know enough Japanese to speak it, you'll probably be able to follow along. Holding out hope for a fan translation, a quick and dirty machine translation, or for better screen translating software or plugins for emulators to translate Japanese text on the fly. The short of it is, this probably belongs in a high tier if you can read it. Putting it into C tier because of the Japanese text, otherwise this is clearly an A tier Bleach game with the potential to be even better. If you can read Japanese, or you're confident you can play this without needing to know the language, this is an incredibly easy recommendation.
This is another hollow entry. For the BLEACH Heat the Soul 3 segment, I am reusing a portion of Sushi Bites episode 103, where I previously reviewed the game. Yada yada. Skip to the next entry if you do not wish to see it again.
With almost a whole year between the last entry and this one, the amount of new content is astounding. Heat the Soul 3 has a combined 34 playable characters, a batch of new arenas, and a slew of new modes, including Soul Road and the fan-pleasing Karakura Heroes Mark. Overall, this selection of playable characters is staggering. Everyone from the first two games returns, plus a whole bunch more. All of the captains are playable. There are some far-out inclusions, such as Nemu Kurotsuchi and Yachiru Kusajishi, who are probably included just because they're fan favourites. Also worth noting is the appearance of Ulquiorra Schiffer as an unlockable character, who was a fresh addition to the story at the time. This huge roster would only expand further as the series continued. With most of the game's core content being the same, it makes sense just to talk about the game's other modes, outside of arcade mode, survival mode, training, etc. This game's gimmicky exclusive mode is Soul Road, and it has you pick a character of choice and a support buddy. The buddy character talks to you at seemingly random intervals, and you answer their questions. Answer correctly and you earn loads of trust points, which can be traded in to unlock new stuff, like more characters, outfits, or support buddies. The support feature is a good idea when implemented in battle, as your partner character can be used to incapacitate your opponent or temporarily recover your health or spirit powers. It's one of the genuine improvements in Heat the Soul 3 that makes the fighting flow even better than before. Next mode I'd like to talk about is Mission Battle, in which various moments from the show are fought out in the palms of your hands. It's this game's story mode. While the missions start as far back as training with Urahara to recover Ichigo's Shinigami powers, it goes on about as far as the end of the Rescue arc, providing the largest story mode so far. Of course, it's still only up to the Rescue arc. If you were looking for anything to do with the Arrancar invasion, you're shit out of luck. Each stage in Mission Battle starts with a text briefing, and then an in-game cutscene, followed by a battle. Once the battle is over, you get a full-motion video scene stripped straight from the show. Each battle has a special win condition. For example, Mission 2 will only end when you inflict a final blow with the Getsuga Tensho technique. Mission Battle gets increasingly more difficult, and before long you'll be shedding hair trying to understand the win criteria. My recommendation is to grab a guide that spells it out for you. There are plenty online if you know where to look. While the gallery and cards return, they can now be purchased at the item shop. Instead of having to unlock things through collecting cards, you could just buy the things you want outright with the points you earn. So yeah, besides the other modes like versus CPU, training, there isn't really all that much to this game that isn't in the others. Well, there is one pretty neat secret, and that's the previously aforementioned Karakura Heroes Mark. This is a story-driven bonus mode with its own unique plot and animated cutscenes. It tells an enjoyable what-if story about how Don Kanonji, spirit medium extraordinaire, recruits death gods to help with this television show. This mode is a nice treat for series fans and thoroughly entertaining. You can get through this game and unlock everything with a guide or a bit of trial and error, but with questions and mission criteria in Japanese, not knowing the language will really hinder your likelihood of enjoying the game. This is definitely the entry to start at if you're looking to see what Bleach Heat the Soul is all about. This is before the game was inundated with different soul types, tag combos, and character transformations, and therefore a wonderful place for players new to the series to start. I can recommend any of these Heat the Soul games to PSP collectors without a moment's hesitation, and also to Bleach series fans. Owning any of the first 3 Heat the Soul games is easy considering their low price on the second-hand import market, and the sheer number of copies out there. If you're collecting PSP games, it's a no-brainer. Get the Bleach games. They're fun to collect, and they're fun to play.
Bleach Heat the Soul 3 goes into S tier. Its 34-character roster and fully featured story mode is staggering. Plus, Karakura Heroes Mark is a fantastic slab of fanservice. Heat the Soul 3 is an extremely easy recommendation to all Bleach fans, and all soon-to-be Bleach fans. It is still rather cheap second-hand, and I believe it belongs in every PSP owner's collection. This is another hollow entry. I am reusing a section from Sushi Bites episode, this time number 107. So you know the drill. If this is something you've seen before and do not wish to see again, you may skip ahead.
Bleach Blade Battlers was developed by Rakshin and published by Sony Computer Entertainment Interactive on the 12th of October 2006, with 23 playable characters, spanning from the beginning of the series up to the end of Soul Society The Rescue arc. This game adapts content from 63 episodes of the show into video game form. Sony were a sponsor of the Bleach TV anime in Japan, and their systems were no stranger to Bleach games, with the PS2, PS3, and PlayStation Portable each having games based on the franchise. While fairly early in the Bleach video game timeline, This title had already been preceded by 7 titles. 3 Heat the Soul games had been released for the PSP, the GameCube title Tasogare ni Mamieru Shinigami, the Game Boy Advance's Kurenai ni Somaru Soul Society, and 2 other PS2 games, JRPG-style title Hanatareshi Yabou, and the third-person beat-em-up Erabareshi Tamashii. For Blade Battlers to stand out, it would need something the others didn't have. Besides an easy-to-pronounce title, it also has 4-player multiplayer. Blade Battlers is a fighting game for up to 4 players, with gameplay mildly similar to the cult classic Capcom brawler Power Stone. The story mode of Blade Battlers features funny what-if scenarios, each made up of several battles or survival rounds, where the player must defeat a certain number of ghosts or survive for a long enough time. The battles are bookended by voiced cutscenes, starring the show's cast of voice talent, reprising their roles. I particularly enjoyed Masakazu Morita as Ichigo Kurosaki, who was clearly having fun in the studio delivering every single one of his lines.
恐怖を捨てろ前を見ろ引けば老いるぞ苦せば死ぬぞ絶対に決めるいけー早く帰って寝るよ
Besides these episodes, you can also play a mission mode, which is how other characters are unlocked. For every so many points rewarded for completing objectives, a character will automatically be made available. A shop feature allows you to buy items to view in the gallery. These include bottle-top figures of each of the game's playable characters complete with voice clips. You can also unlock the game's epilogue images, comedy video clips of the game's playable characters playing soccer, and special collectible figurines showing key battles in the series, and this one called Nice Angle, which if you watched the show in English you wouldn't know what the fuck it meant. Along with these collectibles, you can also uncover the hidden sword hunting missions that allow each character to earn a second special move, borrowing an opponent's signature attack for their own. To unlock a sword hunting mission, both of the characters involved in the mission must have been unlocked. There's something satisfying about seeing Rukia using her brother's Senbon Sakura Kageyoshi, however lore-crushingly outrageous it may be. Beating every sword hunting mission will open up a special menu where you can watch interviews with the voice cast. Overall, quite a meaty amount of content is packed away in this title. The cast of playable characters features anybody I'd have considered a main character in the first 3 seasons. The roster includes most of the relevant captains from the Rescue arc as playable characters, but stops short of lesser important lieutenants or captains. I find this game to be a decent bit of fun to play as a Bleach fan, but it is certainly lacking in many areas. The rigid, clunky fighting and weird lock-on system are hard to get used to, and I struggled to do well in the beginning, though it finally clicked for me. One bizarrely poor choice on the developer's part has Rukia sporting her Gigai, human body, in gameplay, until powering up into her awakened form, her Shinigami form. Not only does this make 0 sense in the game, as by this point in the story, she would have not only have recovered her Shinigami powers, but she also appears in cutscenes in her Shihakusho. But it also means struggling with an underpowered Rukia until you're down to red health, when you can finally activate your Shinigami powers, by which time it's far too late to turn the tide of battle. Despite this, it's oddly fun. The game had plenty of room to improve, and thankfully the sequel addresses almost all of these complaints. Almost.
Bleach Blade Battlers go straight into beat here. The exciting what-if scenarios are a lot of fun, and this is an incredibly solid package overall, with a lot of content. As the first Bleach console title with full 4-player multiplayer, it provides a lot of potential replay value. It takes a while to get used to the game's stubborn control and slightly backward design, but overall, it is a game more than worthy of the Bleach name.
Bleach Shattered Blade. That's the damn truth. Forget Shattered Blade. This is completely broken. Shattered Blade is the follow-up to 2005's Tasogare ni Mamieru Shinigami, but because it was released exclusively for Wii and in the early days of the console's life, the game can only be played using motion controls. For whatever reason, whether that be publisher meddling from Sega, insistence from Nintendo, or the infinite wisdom of developer Polygon Magic, a borderline decent GameCube title was jerry-rigged into this Wiimote waggle-filled nightmare. On top of these god-awful controls that can't tell if you're shaking, stabbing, or whatever else, you have the new clashes that are essentially rock, paper, scissors! Because it can't tell what motion you're doing, it's seemingly random what input it thinks you made. You could charge up your character's transformation using the nunchuck, but it feels terribly unresponsive because, let's face it, the motion sensor in the nunchuck sucks! Also, there is no pause button during a fight. Situational disability, am I right, parents? Or any kind of skip option for the long drawn-out transformation sequences. But a bad game can still be worth trying for the story, so how does it fare? This is the what-if tale set just after the initial defeat of Aizen and the rescue of Rukia. Ichigo is told by Yoruichi that in order to stop Aizen from invading Soul Society, the Senkaimon Spirit Gate will be closed off for 100 years, on Old Man Yamamoto's orders. Unfortunately, this would stop Ichigo and his friends from being able to return home. However, Ichigo is told that if he collects the shards from the Sokyoku that was shattered when Rukia was rescued from her execution, then he can use the power of them to reopen the Senkaimon or whatever. It is revealed upon collecting the shards that they were actually being gathered for Original the character, Arturo Pleiades, an Arrancar who needs these shards to attain the ultimate power of 1,000,000 Zanpakuto. Turns out it was not the real Yoruichi, but Dollar Store Ulquiorra that told Ichigo to go search for the shards. And the other characters who have been searching for these shards were also misled and lied to by Arturo, who was pretending to be someone else. That doesn't make any sense. If he needed these shards so badly, couldn't he have just asked one person to go looking for them? Misleading multiple people into searching doesn't really help, they just end up fighting amongst themselves. Outside of the story, there's an arcade mode and some other stuff, but to be honest with you, I bashed my head against this game for 2.5 hours and said, I'm done! During that time, I had managed to complete 3 stories, with plenty of unfair losses due to unacceptable motion controls. With all due respect, this is one title where button controls wouldn't necessarily make it an immediate masterpiece, but would have definitely saved it from its low placement. The graphics look fairly okay, the music is quite interesting, and I swear that's the Dalai Lama.
Oh, this is the level with the Dalai Lama.
But the cutscene presentation is so dry compared to the slightly more animated cutscenes of its GameCube predecessor. The way I see it, Shattered Blade was cobbled together rather than being the result of someone with a vision. And that's a damn shame. E-tier. 2006 was a very heavy year for Bleach releases. Between 2005 and 2006 alone, we are almost halfway through the Bleach games. Oh, that says extra and not a year. What's going on? Well, we're going to take a moment now to go through Bleach-adjacent games, the Jump series, which we will blitz through in this lightning round. Bleach was serialized in Japan's Jump magazine, and therefore Ichigo has had many opportunities to hang with his Jump associates, old and new, in 4 titles. But remember, before you get all hung up on the tiers, we are ranking these as Bleach games and not as Jump games. Released in 2005, Jump Superstars is a multiplayer brawler featuring characters from Jump magazine, with gameplay that loosely resembles Smash Bros. Beloved characters from many Jump franchises, including Bleach, battle it out to be the very best, like no one ever was. Players can create their own manga page, where their playable characters and assist characters must be slotted into gaps to fit. Connecting related characters together results in buffs or extra abilities. As a Bleach game, the franchise is poorly represented. The only playable character is Ichigo Kurosaki. The others are delegated to merely support or assistance roles. Detail. Ultimate Stars is more of an expand-alone than a new game. The game is very similar to the previous entry, just with many more series and characters represented. As a Bleach game, the franchise is better represented this time around, with Ichigo, Rukia, Toshiro, and Renji being playable. Ichigo can also be evolved into his Bankai form, and evolved again into his holification state. There are also 7 support characters and 6 help characters, fleshing out the series' presence within Ultimate Stars much better. C tier. Initially released in Japan in 2014, J-Stars Victory Versus was re-released in 2015 in the West as J-Stars Victory Versus Plus. It is an arena fighter that I never really got into back when I purchased it digitally for PS4, though not for want of trying. Playing it again nowadays to get this footage, I can actually see the appeal. This is one bomb-ass game. The story mode is split into 4 teams. You can select whose team you want to play as. In the Pursuit arc, you play as Ichigo, who begins his story in Soul Society and soon branches out to the other Jump worlds. In J-Stars Victory Versus, you win by getting to the required number of wins, usually 3. You can do this by whittling down an opponent's health until they run out, like any typical fighting game. If you and your team are putting on pressure, laying it on thick, you might get to activate a friendship bonus. In this state, you can use a super special move. These are usually quite powerful. Unfortunately, the developers had the genius idea of making Ichigo's super special move the Tensa Zangetsu Mugetsu, which causes Ichigo to lose consciousness after using the move. Is it canon? Yes. Is it kinda funny that Ichigo gets knocked out by his own dumb move? Yeah, it's fucking hilarious. However, it also gives the opponent a point, too. What's worse is that it does this even if the attack is blocked or doesn't connect. Great, you got knocked out, gave the enemy a point, and didn't manage to kill them. Way to go, loser. As a Bleach game, having Ichigo knock himself out and give the enemy a match point when he uses his special is bad enough. But when only Ichigo and Aizen are playable, that's just insulting. Rukia's in the game as an assist, but we'd have much rather had her playable than Sasuke Aizen, right folks? That's it for Bleach representation, by the way. Ichigo, Aizen, and Rukia on support. If this game wasn't so bomb-ass, I'd be placing it lower. D tier. The unique premise for 2019's Jump Force is that you create your own character and then fight alongside characters from Jump Comics in this arena fighter. Some manner of super evil being that definitely isn't your commander in disguise has been infecting characters with Umbra cubes, and this negative dark energy causes them to turn against their friends. My major criticism for Jump Force is that it really needn't exist. Don't get me wrong, I was excited for it when it was announced and first shown, but the game was developed with the West in mind. The art style, choice of playable characters, game setting, menus, and overall presentation are clearly tailored to match what Japanese developers believed Western players wanted. We like Japanese video games because they're so different from what everyone else is releasing, so it's no surprise the game only achieved average scores from critics and gamers alike after tailoring itself to perceived Western tastes. In terms of Bleach representation, 4 characters are playable in the base game: Ichigo, Rukia, Aizen, and Renji. In the DLC, Toshiro, Grimjo, and Yoroichi are added. Not a fantastic selection, but to have this much Bleach representation at a time when the series was almost entirely dead is at least somewhat acceptable. You can get Bleach-themed skills and abilities. You can even get Ichigo's Hollow Mask as an accessory you can wear. That is about it for Bleach representation within Jump Force, though. As a Bleach game, this is a D-tier offering. It's not much better as a Jump game either. I really did want to like this one, but it's just not for me. Now that we've taken a look at the Jump titles, let's go back to the Bleach games. We moved from 2006 on to 2007. There were just 3 titles released in this year, 2 exclusively in Japan. We'll start with that sequel to Blade of Fate I briefly mentioned. Jokes about the name aside, Dark Souls is a direct follow-up to Blade of Fate, also released in Europe and USA sometime afterwards, much like its predecessor. Changes have been made to deck customization, now including frames, which adjust how many of what cards you're allowed to use, which has basically ruined deck construction for me. No more just having the cards you want, no, now you have to strike a very specific point balance. They do say art is made out of adversity, but I feel like the restrictions imposed are going to result in very similar decks for high-level players. There's also Reiju, the equivalent to, say, accessories in an RPG, which can be equipped into certain frames. These adjust your stats, but certain frames can only carry a particular number or type of Reiju. I'm really not keen on these changes. During gameplay, you can now hold 4 spirit cards instead of 2, which is a huge improvement. All the buttons and cards fit onto one screen, with no need to select change to use them, which is an improvement. The story mode picks up where the last game's secret ending finished up. Byakuya defeated, Rukia saved, and the believed dead Aizen has fled to the Land of Hollows with Gin and Tozen. While the newly revered heroes Ichigo and gang wait for the new Spirit Gate to be built to allow them to travel home, it's the perfect opportunity to get in some training and hone their skills. In other words, the story is filler. Because of the game's humour and writing, I can give its semi-canon story a free pass. The story is packed full of references to previous events, for example Yoroichi teasing Ichigo over her being the first woman he'd seen naked, which enrages Soifon. Moments like this are what makes Dark Souls' story really enjoyable to play. There's one battle where a punch-drunk Izuru challenges you to a fight, meanwhile Rangiku is passed out at the back. After that you have to fight Rangiku, who has come too, but now Izuru isn't feeling so hot back there. This time, the story mode structure is in the form of a map, with locked squares that require certain coloured keys to open. Less obtuse than the previous game's win condition bullshit, as you're now not going to find yourself getting stuck figuring out where to go, and more importantly, how to go. There are now mini-games and other types of battles, which results in what I would consider a much fuller experience overall. Feels less repetitive, and of course characters still refer to the game's ludicrous map system in their dialogue, criticising both that and the game's script, though not on the scale of the previous game's constant vitriol levied towards its obnoxious design. The story mode features multiple boards to traverse, and there's loads more opportunities here for certain characters to interact with one another. For everything great this sequel does, there's something that sullies it for me, but in terms of character treatment, writing, and gameplay, the game is majorly improved. And hey, I even managed to input 2 of the Urahara passwords, so clearly it's a superior game. Slipping this one into low B tier, I do wonder how the other DS Bleach games compare, the ones that aren't made by Treasure. Featuring 51 playable characters, Heed the Soul 4 brings with it a lot of content to appreciate. The game's story mode covers events mostly lifted from the Arrancar arc, and introduces many fairly huge gameplay alterations, some I like, some I despise. One feature I'm not particularly keen on is the Soul Blaze, activated using square and triangle. This allows you to input a string of moves which are then performed quickly. They deal a lot less damage but are unblockable, so I will have to admit it's a great way to get a few attacks in on someone who just won't stop guarding. It just deals pathetic damage. Then there is a new feature that personally ruined this game for me, the Soul System. When you select your character, you get to pick whether your character has a Soul Reaper, Vizard, or Arrancar soul. In this game, the soul you pick basically affects your character's overall ability. Each soul has its positives and negatives. To go into it would be a bit boring, and to be honest, I don't fully understand it, so let's just say each one changes the playstyle, so you pick the one best suited to you. One way to know which one that is would be to screw around in practice mode until something clicks. I only ever pick the Shinigami soul because that's the only one that lets you pick 2 assist characters. So I may not be keen on the soul system, but I do have a new favourite feature: combinable partner abilities. If you picked a Soul Reaper soul, when both partners are charged up, you can use their powers together at the same time, and there are some really good combinations out there to be discovered. There are 77 partners to pick from, which is pretty outrageous. Some classic features are gone, the big Ryatsu bar, the whole soul tug-of-war is completely missing. The third game is the last game to use that system, and it basically separated Bleach Heat the Soul from all other fighting games at the time. If you like that feature, as did I, then you're going to be mega disappointed. Now you have to fill up a bar to use your special moves. In one way, this stops the ability for players to mash special moves with reckless abandon, which is important. Soifong has an instant kill attack, which you could mash repeatedly in the last game, so the change did need to happen. But it also spoils my fun. The Spirit Bar was so rooted in the series rules, and with that missing, it's a huge disappointment. Character Master is this game's Soul Road, and it's somehow even better. You pick a character, and then you fight endless battles, raising your character's experience level. As they level up, you unlock system voices and special costumes for the character, should they have a special outfit you can unlock. Each battle has its own win conditions, which are completely in Japanese, so you will need to give a guide a quick glance, and then you should be okay. Mission Battle returns, and once again, you guessed it, the criteria is written entirely in Japanese. There are 32 missions to play through, so it is fairly lengthy. Having to repeat a mission over and over because you cleared it incorrectly is frustrating, but again, that's what online guides are for. If it wasn't for what Character Master brings to the series, I'd probably have considered this offering of modes the worst so far. The menus are a boring slate grey, the soundtrack seems way too mellow for the most part, and the whole presentation is generally uninteresting. It does really boil down to just how much fun unlocking everything through Character Master can be, which really is the only reason to play. I may knock the presentation, but I'm pretty sure the game's performance shot up. If you're a Bleach fan, you probably should play this, but the large amount of significant gameplay changes doesn't sit right with me. It just pains me to know the game could have been better if certain elements were kept the same as before and not altered for seemingly no reason. It goes into B tier on account of its large amount of content, but the significant changes to the game's core identity and features are the first sign that releasing one of these every year may eventually lead to diminishing returns.
For the very last time in this video, we have a hollow entry. I am reusing a segment from Sushi Bites episode 107, so if you've seen it before and do not wish to see it again, you may skip ahead.
BLEACH Blade Battlers 2nd.
Just under a whole year after the first Blade Battlers game came Blade Battlers 2nd, on September the 27th, 2007. This game includes characters and content from Arrancar the Arrival arc. A handful of the Vizard and Arrancar characters were added to the roster, along with a few Shinigami captains, lieutenants, and subordinates. Overall, 9 characters were added to the fully returning roster, bringing the playable count to 36. Characters oddly missing from the first game are now also accounted for. To balance such a large roster, all characters have had their signature moves replaced with awakened forms, which makes the game lose a bit of its charm, I feel. No more Kon-wielding Zangetsu, which is just heartbreaking. The game has been hugely improved in almost every conceivable facet. The character models look nicer, the environments are more detailed, and the gameplay is switched up for the better, with the new awakened forms, each one changing the way the battle plays out. Uryu's awakened form will make Quincy arrows rain down from the sky on top of your opponents. Ichigo's awakened form will add multiple clones that do damage to other targets. Rukia's awakened form freezes the arena, making it slippery for others. These powers add a brand new level of tactics to each battle. Unfortunately, Rukia once again dons the Gigai form at the beginning of each fight, but her Gigai form has been powered up extensively, and it is now explained in-universe why she is choosing to wear it. However ridiculous her still wearing it is, at least she's not weak as balls and practically unplayable anymore. As with the last game, a selection of what-if scenarios are available, including one where some of Bleach's heartthrobs don women's clothing. Ichigo in a wedding dress, Renji as a schoolgirl, Izuru as a nurse. It certainly caught me off guard. Alongside these, the mission mode returns, though instead of a list of missions, it is now in the form of a large board with multiple paths and characters to befriend. When you get someone new, you unlock them for every mode. You can switch character, partner, and CPU difficulty easily from the pause menu, and the objectives on each mission increase replay value. The shop and gallery also return. You can unlock each of the game's illustrations, 3 RadioCon shorts, which are always good for a laugh, and you can also buy accessories with which to customize each fighter in the game. Our top story tonight. Even the Bleach cast are doing their best to quell the spread. Shigakuni Yamamoto Genryusai has ordered all non-essential Shinigami to stay in their barracks until further notice. I have no difficulty in recommending either of these fantastic fighting games to collectors, regardless of whether they are Bleach fans or not. Bleach fans will certainly get far more out of them than those unfamiliar with the license, but they're still pretty fun brawlers with good mechanics, especially the second title, which ironed out practically all of the kinks. Bleach fans will want to play both, as they offer unique experiences tailored for the fans. And if you're a collector, you will want both of these, but I'd recommend at least giving the second one a play, just to see what it's like. You might find out you're a closet Bleach fan.
Bleach Blade Battlers 2nd goes into A tier. The adjustments to the character's abilities and skills make the game a lot more enjoyable than the first Blade Battlers. And the 36 character roster means that there is always a new character to learn to use. You should totally give this one a go. even if you're one of those weird people that doesn't like Bleach.
2008 now. This year saw 4 Bleach titles released. One was eventually released in English 1 year later, but I've listed it under 2008 because that was its initial release date in Japan. 2008 was also the year I started my YouTube channel, and to think I'd still be making content now when it was just intended to be a time killer, this is the obligatory moment where I tell you what you can do to help me. Remember to like the video. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing to be notified when I upload next. And there are channel memberships. For as little as £1, your contributions turn this little thing I do for fun into the occasional paycheck, and you get perks and emotes for joining. That's the whole pitch. I won't mention it again. Anyway, 2008, we start, once again, with this year's Heat the Soul entry. Heat the Soul 5 changes up the entire roster and gameplay system. Gone is the ability to pick a character in their already transformed state, now you must transform within battle. This drags the core characters down to 32, because only characters who can transform have managed to stay on. Despite this, the rest of the characters from Heat the Soul 4, an extra 16 fighters can be unlocked by converting your Heat the Soul 4 save in a special menu tucked away under Appendix. Doing this brings the fighter count back up to 58, meaning we're actually 7 characters up. But players without Heat the Soul 4 or access to the internet to download somebody else's save won't be able to access these characters. Even after enabling these characters, they're locked to single battle mode because, as already stated, they don't have transformations. They're more of an afterthought than anything else. This could be seen as an example of on-disc DLC. Remember earlier when I said that making up moves would bite us in the ass? Because Rukia's initial form is her Gigai, we have the same problem we experienced in Blade Battlers. We have to play as the weaker version of Rukia and then transform. You know how Heat the Soul 4 just let us select Rukia in a Shihakusho? Nope, not this time. Gigai first. If they had just given us her with a sword but she has to transform to use her ice moves, that'd be great, but no. You need to charge up 2 whole power bars to even be allowed to look at your sword.
Editing Herb here just to say that I am slightly wrong about Rukia's transformation. It's worse, you can't even use her regular released form until you unlock them in Tagmaster, which makes the whole situation even worse. Just download a save file. Just download someone else's save file.
This is the first game in the Heat the Soul series to use characters from the movies, with Senna from Bleach Memories of Nobody and Sojiro from Bleach The Diamond Dust Rebellion. Until now, the game series had refrained from using playable characters who did not appear in the manga. I would probably guess that because few new characters appeared between the games, the team felt it was necessary to include these too. In my opinion, the more the merrier. I don't care. Should have thrown some vampires from the filler in too. I always liked Jin and Mabashi. They would have been great in this. The soul system is gone and good riddance. In its place is a bunch of other genius new innovations, so let's roll through them. A tag system, because every fighting game was doing it, an upgrade of the Soul Blaze, so your partner comes in and helps you out, and unique tag special moves, which are pretty cool. While the Soul system itself is missing, an oddly similar tag style feature exists, which is available in 3 types. You can pick from defensive, offensive, and technical tag settings, which limits what you can do with your tag partner. This needs to go, it's awful, but at least it doesn't get in the way of the fun being had, at least not too much. The game has 2 tutorial modes that teach the rules of single and tag battles, and even contains various story elements from previous seasons of the show. There is also the story mode, which loosely follows the manga from just where the last game ended until the final showdown with Ichigo and Grimmjow. There are only 18 stages in story mode, which seems kind of a waste of time. It even ends abruptly, and you don't feel like it's really gone anywhere. Disappointing, I'd say. The new Tag Master mode will eat most of your time, playing out just like number 4's Character Master, but with 2 playable characters instead of 1. Again, the completion criteria is kind of difficult. I think you can soldier through this one a lot easier. Using a guide wouldn't hurt. This is basically Heat the Soul 5 in a nutshell. You can soldier through it more or less. Even most of the unlockables are the same. The tag feature does make the game feel different enough from Heat the Soul 4 to warrant its existence, but it seems mostly kind of weak. I guess at this point, when you're putting one Heat the Soul game out per year, maybe your heart isn't in it anymore. That said, it's probably the best so far in terms of actual content. You don't need to know the ins and outs of everything like in Heat the Soul 4, most of the missions aren't that confusing either. Less, you gotta finish with this move, and more, your attacks do half damage sort of fights. I'm fine with that, I'll just mash my special moves as always. If you're going to pick up one Heat the Soul game, and you want something a little more modern, then you should really be looking at number 5 or onwards. Loads of characters, loads of stuff to do, and the intense fun of Character Master but with the tag team? This is excellent stuff. Addictive unlock system, deeply enjoyable, truly spectacular. This goes into A tier. I know I said it might be the best so far, but I do have greater affection toward Heat the Soul 3 for not inundating the player with too many confusing elements like tag types and transformations. Heat the Soul 5 is worthy of a spot in any PSP collector's library, and certainly belongs in every Bleach fan's.
Editing ERB here. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't have ranked the game this high, but all the graphics and transitions are already created and edited, and this video is already long overdue, so it's in A tier, sort of. Anyway.
Released in English 1 year later in 2009, Third Phantom is an entirely non-canon alternate timeline Bleach game absolutely loaded with recolored OCs. You get to pick which one you want, male or female. Oh, in case you're unfamiliar with what male or female means, that's the same thing as body type A and body type B. Hope that helps. In this title, you get to play as one of 2 orphan twins, who get taken in by a noblewoman and trained to become Soul Reapers. But for whatever reason, the game is a strategy RPG that takes place from an isometric exercise. Care to join me? I know I said I'd give every game a fair shake, but this is a perfect storm. A genre I'm not keen on, a completely non-canon OC-filled story mode, a dry game with slow, long drawn-out animations. This is unlikely to be something I would ever play in full unless someone paid me to. Straight into E tier. The game's developer, Tom Create, has a history of working on weird licensed titles and SD Gundam strategy games, so it's not that odd a mixture to see this gameplay with the Bleach IP. It's just not for me. I'm sure there's some Third Phantom fans out there seething, all 2 of them. They can kiss my ass. Bleach Soul Carnival is a side-scrolling platformer that is a little bit like a Metroidvania, not in the sense that it has a big interconnected map, because it doesn't, but rather it has hidden areas and characters to find, some of which cannot be obtained on your first time through an area. It's a standard hack and slash with special moves, air dashing, jumping, all that. The core gameplay loop consists of dashing and attacking enemies to keep your combo as high as possible, attacking enemies even after they've been defeated to keep juggling them through the overkill state. Keep the combo going, get more chains, get higher ranks, and reap even more rewards for doing so. There are multiple playable characters which are all unlocked throughout the course of the game's story, and the game also features a team system where you can place characters down in a grid and connect them for bonuses. This is kind of like what you would see in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, but years before that game. Items you equip have a colour associated with them, and you can link together characters with the same colour to embellish your power-ups. Even more interesting, certain character combinations yield extra hidden bonuses. These are not telegraphed, instead they have to be discovered by the player based on their knowledge of Bleach. Ichigo, Rukia, and Kon combine to provide the player with a double jump move, and there are tons of similar such combinations to find. There are even more character interactions to discover, like Kon yelling, "Nissan!" when linking up with Rukia, or Orihime giving her best "Wah ha ha" when connecting with Don Kanonji. More off-the-wall references to filler and what-ifs are greatly appreciated, like being able to unlock Karakuriza, the superhero alter ego of Kon, while he resides in Ichigo's body. The art style uses some cute but jarring super deformed character designs. From what I remember of playing this back in the day, and the little bit I've played of this for the tier list, its difficulty betrays its cute graphics. I don't really feel like making too much progress in this game just for the sake of the tier list, because I already know exactly how I feel about Soul Carnival from the umpteen times I've tried to play it before, on hardware and on emulator. This is a C-tier title, but it is one that every Bleach fan should at least try. However, if the art style, difficulty, or lack of a je ne sais quoi puts you off, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. Developed by Treasure, vs. Crusade is exactly what Bleach, Blade of Fate, and Dark Souls would play like if they were transferred into a 3D environment, which makes sense because they were also made by Treasure. This is an arena fighter, which I know would put a lot of people off nowadays, but this is fairly early in the genre and it gets the job done just fine. You can lock onto your opponent and dish out blows, use your special attacks, transform into whatever powered up state you have, and generally kick ass. The game is played with a Wiimote and nunchuck, but you can also use the Virtual Console controller or GameCube pad if you prefer. I was emulating a Virtual Console controller here. Standard attacks are performed by flicking the right stick, then you have specials on X and A, you have Shunpo or Flash Step or your nearest equivalent on B, and partner commands on Y. Once you get into the swing of things, it just works, as Todd would say. Really comfortable combat, easy to learn, hard to master. Much like the Nintendo DS games that Treasure also developed, the branching paths in story mode spin off into wildly different timelines and continuities. After beating the game's canon storyline, which you will naturally gravitate toward, the special conditions and branches become revealed. Win this battle without using Bankai. Win this fight in the first 60 seconds, etc. All these open up wildly different continuities. I played this game for 4 hours and I didn't even realize it. I was having a blast the whole time. All these divergent timelines are wild and show a great deal of creativity from the studio. In terms of roster size, the game contains 26 playable characters and predominantly focuses on the Araka and Hueco Mundo invasion arcs. As a result of this, many characters I would have loved to have played as are missing. Only one of the Vizards, Shinji Hirako, is playable, none of the others are, which is especially disappointing as a Hiyori fan. In terms of female characters on the roster, we have Rukia, Rangiku, Yoruichi, and Neliel. This is a complete sausage party. It's a real boys club. It also bothers me that we're not working with sprites anymore, so we could have had some retextures for the other color variations that aren't just plain colors. Heat the Soul in the very first entry gave Chad a different textured shirt, or Renji his Shinigami Academy clothes, without having to modify the mesh, just the textures. We're lacking soul here, and it upsets me, especially considering how great everything else looks. Vs. Crusade had a now long dead online mode, various standard battle modes, these collectible figurines, and a gallery of artworks to unlock. Unfortunately, once you've completed all the branching paths and collected every figurine, that's it for unlockables in the game. I had the whole thing done within those 4 hours. I do have fond memories of late night Vs. Crusade matches back when the game originally came out, getting buzzed on Cider and seeing who could beat the other one the most senseless. Between Vs. Crusade and Super Smash Bros. Brawl, some of my most cherished multiplayer memories were made here. Those halcyon days I can't get back. That will have an effect on the ranking of this game. You just had to be there when this came out, you know? You just had to be a Bleach fan at the time. Then it all makes sense. I might regret putting the game this high, since it has little staying power once you unlock everything, but I'm putting Vs. Crusade in A tier. What is here can be especially good at times, and those late night battles under the vice grip of alcohol are a memory that I never want to lose. Grab a friend who loves Bleach and make your way through the roster one evening. Get a few drinks in, maybe some pizza. You'll understand why I'm rating it this high. 2009 rolled around, and with it just 3 titles would be released, all of them exclusively in Japan. Like clockwork, we begin with that year's Heat the Soul. Indeed, like clockwork, it's another year and another Heat the Soul. 6. What's so great this time around? How about a gasp-inducing 74 playable characters? Also, a character from the most recent Bleach movie at the time, the incredibly compelling Dark Rukia, has also been added. There's a customization system, a championship mode, and a story mode that starts at the beginning of the show and runs all the way up to where the anime had got to at the time. Some of these missions have to be unlocked by completing unknown criteria in other missions, usually getting an A or an S rank, but not always. This encourages replaying missions over and over, trying to figure out the big secret. As per usual, some of the completion criteria is cryptic as hell. While 60 missions does sound grand, a lot of these are recycled from older games. This game has made it unnecessary to play 1 through 5, because everything story-wise is here in 6. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. The honeymoon period does wear off. With loads of buttons and functions changed around again, it's even harder to know how to do whatever the thing is you want to do. Some missions require I transform, but not knowing I could do that, or how to do it, I eventually had to once again refer to a guide. The transformation is now activated using L and R, with 2 full bars by the way. Did you know there was a release of this game in Asia, with an English cover and a quick start booklet? I know that version's still in Japanese, but if they went to the effort of making an English cover, why couldn't they have localized it? Heat the Soul 6 goes straight into A tier. A-ting, we're really starting to push the PSP to its limits now with the Heat the Soul titles, and there's just one more of those to go. Thankfully, Bleach 4th isn't a strategy RPG. Instead, it's a very strange side-scrolling action game from Dimps of all people. Dimps, of course, developed Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure, and I can see the similarities and through lines: gorgeous sprite art, side-scrolling beat-em-up gameplay with cumbersome controls, messy level design, and banging music, a real mixed bag. I must admit I didn't spend a lot of time with this one. It's not that it didn't gel with me, it very much did. It's just I played all 4 Bleach games for this tier list in the space of 2 days, and to be honest, that's a lot of Bleach on DS, makes you want to skip over things. The plot, from what I can gather, being the first and only DS Bleach game to not receive an official English release, is that Rukia finds a mysterious artifact, and after interacting with it, it turns her Zanpakuto red and takes over her mind, making her evil. Ichigo responds to the holo alarm and eventually bumps into Rukia, and during the fight, his Zanpakuto is struck and starts to turn red too. That's about all I could gather. The language barrier may be an issue, as bosses can ask you questions, and I'm not sure if you need to get them right or not, or what the questions or answers are, or what they even do. If this looks like something you'd play, it probably is. I might dedicate some time to it someday, but I think the likelihood of that is fairly low, to be honest. There's a good 1,000 games at least that I'd play before I decided, oh hey, today feels like a good day to play Bleach 4th. D tier. In terms of enhancements and improvements, Soul Carnival 2s are not immediately noticeable from the outset. Any excitement I had for the game was dashed from the starting line in an instant. Soul Carnival 2 begins at the very start of Bleach, with Ichigo receiving Soul Reaper powers from Rukia. Its liberal use of anime clips and still frames comes across as cheap and lazy. I do fully intend to give this game a longer, more detailed shake at some point in the future. I'm hoping that by whatever time that is, there might be a fan translation or better machine translation tools so that I can enjoy the game in greater depth. Soul Carnival 2 has 24 playable characters and 120 support characters. There's a walkthrough online that more or less fully translates the game. Now, if somebody could modify the game to use that translation, that'd be great. Maybe I'll sit down with it. But I just don't have the patience right now. If I get around to it. I'm tentatively slapping this into C tier, above the first one, but it could easily move around the list if I gave it more time. But I won't give it more time, at least not anytime soon! It is now 2010, and Bleach will see its last PSP title this year, as the Heat the Soul sub-series comes to its eventual close. So you know the drill, this one is fairly similar to the last one, it's just a matter of more content for the most part. What does Heat the Soul 7 add, remove, or change? Let's go through the main differences. There's now 85 playable characters and 1 DLC character available. There are 4-person battles and giant enemy battles to pad the game out. A story mode containing 25 missions and Hueco Mundo Conquest mode, which is a condition-based battle mode. I personally haven't put a great amount of time into this one, as each game became more overwhelming and offered more and more content, pushing the PSP to its absolute limits. It's a shame none of these Heat the Soul titles came to us across the pond, as both number 6 and number 7 would have made for fantastic English language releases. Though by 2009 and 2010, PSP games were getting released less often due to concerns of piracy. Publishers just saw PSP releases at this time as just a little bit too risky. I will tentatively place this into A tier, as it is quite similar to number 6, so everything that applies to 6 applies to 7, more or less. Huge roster, a shorter story mode, but the content itself is new, leading up to a so-called final battle against Aizen. But A-ting probably knew they weren't going to make another one of these, so they slapped an ending together quickly.
平子、井上、ルキア、これで全部終わりにするぜ。
All the Heat the Soul games are fun to collect. If any of these look like something you'd want to play, I can't recommend them enough, especially 3, 6, and 7. 2011 would see Bleach's last standard home console release, one that we would also receive in the United Kingdom, France, Australia, and North America. This is on the tail end of the franchise's popularity. I see a lot of people online refer to this as Bleach Dynasty Warriors, Bleach Muso, but I think that really undersells what we have here. For the first, and currently, only time on a HD console, we have a fully 3D Bleach game with a staggering amount of playable characters, satisfying mechanics, and more style than was ever remotely necessary. Developed by Rakshin, who had previously worked on Blade Battlers and the Soul Carnival sub-series, Resurrección combines that aforementioned Dynasty Warriors hack-and-slash gameplay with RPG mechanics, leveling up, and character unlocking to create something quintessentially Bleach. As a series that started out as a boisterous, loud, and in-your-face response to other serialized manga at the time, Soul Resurrección is an equally loud and boisterous title, with menus that drip with greasy goodness that glide in response to your inputs, resembling something you'd expect to see out of Persona 5, wailing guitars punctuating the soundtrack, and super flashy special moves. This is one game that really does embody the, dare I say, soul of Bleach. The main meat of the game is the story mode, which begins at and quickly glosses over some of the earlier events of the invasion of Hueco Mundo, covering as much ground as possible so it can get to the Arrancar invasion of fake Karakura Town faster. It's safe to say that this is a game for fans of the series who have already experienced the events leading up to Ichigo's usage of Mugetsu to defeat Aizen via the manga or the anime. A companion to the series certainly, but a replacement this is not. Unlike Naruto Shippuden, Ultimate Ninja Storm titles for example, which spell out and recreate scenes in intricate detail, Resurrección assumes you're already a fan of the franchise, who has already consumed everything relevant, and just gives you what you want, the core fights interspersed with hack-and-slash gameplay. The main flow is something like this. You wail on enemies using your standard attacks with square, and special moves with circle and triangle to build up your ignition bar. They should have just called the game Soul Ignition like they did in Japan, considering the bar is still called the Ignition Bar outside of Japan, but I digress. Once you fill up the Ignition Bar, activating it with L2 puts you into Ignition Mode, where you have a modified moveset, you have plot armor, your attacks do crazy damage, and in classic Muso style, you can trigger a special Ignition move to do crazy damage, but at the cost of your remaining Ignition. So basically, wail on enemies, activate Ignition, deal crazy damage, repeat. And this is incredibly satisfying. So I mentioned unlocks. You get souls to spend on upgrades by destroying scenery, hitting large combos, and killing enemies. These souls can be spent to upgrade your characters. Each character has their own soul count and upgrade tree, and they can break into everyone else's upgrade trees and claim their upgrades for themselves. Naturally, every character can become ludicrously overpowered in the process. If the game seems too easy for you on normal, and it probably will, you can play on hard too. I suspect you gain greater rewards on a higher difficulty, but I'm enjoying the power fantasy of ripping through bosses by spamming the Getsuga Tensha! Besides the story mode, there is the mission mode. Mission mode will also get you souls for characters to use for leveling up, but also features unlockable character voices, models, etc. for viewing in Soul Resurrection's collection mode. The missions are much the same fare, but playable with anyone, usually consisting of getting to the end of the stage, killing all enemies in the process. You can replay them as much as you want, making them a great way to level your character up and get more upgrades. Soul Attack is this game's competitive mode, you cannot play it straight away. You have to at least reach and complete missions 10 and 11 in mission mode first. Your scores in Soul Attack could, back in the day, be submitted online via PlayStation Network, so this was the mandatory online leaderboard mode, irrelevant nowadays of course, but I'm sure the bragging rights had many a neckbeard swimming in pussy back in 2011. Speaking of neckbeards, you have the option of playing the game with the English or Japanese voices, meaning wherever you lie on the weeaboo scale, you'll find a setting that works for you. Soul Resurrección is easily an S-tier game, with its incredibly satisfying loop, huge roster of playable characters, and featuring some of the more intense moments from the later part of Bleach at the time. It ends up being packed full of love for the franchise and replay value. Playing it today, it's every bit as good as it was when it first came out. This is one game that time has been very favourable towards. Its tight hack-and-slash gameplay is still very much tried, tested, and true, a good 13 years on from its release. Many mobile games have come and gone, but one has stuck around and seen releases on video game consoles and Steam. So, I'm going to break my rules, we're going to jump forward to 2015 and take a look at Bleach Brave Souls. First released in 2015 on Android and 2016 on iOS, Bleach Brave Souls is technically the last Bleach video game to release, at least as far as this list is concerned. There have been other mobile games since, but I don't really touch on mobile games. Get it? Touch on? Touch on? I'm making an exception for Brave Souls because it has been around for 9 years at this point and has received not only a port to PC, but also the PlayStation 4. The game is also coming to Xbox One and Switch this summer, which means it may already be out by the time this video releases.
Ignore the solar radiation. Editing ERB here, yeah, the port's been out since, like, very late June. I'm currently editing this on September 16th. Oh, this video has taken way too long! I'm just gonna get back to it. My eyes are sore.
Brave Souls is not a particularly good game, but that barely matters for mobile phone trash. The gameplay may be dull, oh absolutely, and the social features of the game seem fairly minimal too, but in terms of content this might be hard to beat. When you boot this game up for the first time in 2024 or whatever, complete the tutorial and download the rest of the game, you'll be given several spins for really strong characters off the bat. When I gave this a go not too long ago, I was allowed to choose 10 characters I really wanted, and the game straight up gave me one of those at random as a gift. When capturing footage for this video, however, the game gave me lots of free spins and discounted spins instead. The starting rewards seem to change often. Yeah, it's a gacha, and it's not a particularly good one. I'm sure there are some whales out there that must collect every single variant of their favourite Bleach waifu, but the gacha pretty much breaks the game's story mode. It becomes so absurdly easy when using these free spins that it may as well be a Bleach-themed visual novel, as the gameplay is over no sooner than you start it. It's a top-down game with enemies and bosses to defeat, but you merely need to look at them funny with one of these special characters and they just die. The game also uses a system whereby other players' characters can join you for bosses. Again, in the story mode, it just means bosses die in a couple of seconds flat. You sometimes barely even get to see them before someone's level 100 Nanoitra, or whatever, has stormed in and one-shotted the boss. I'm sure it will get harder as time goes on, but I put in like 6 or 7 hours into this and it just stayed easy the whole time. When the game gives you a 5-star Chinese New Year Rukia and you use her mating ritual dance to eliminate every enemy on screen, it makes a mockery of the bosses, for sure. So what's the reason, if any, to play this? It's packed with content. A complete retelling of Bleach from start to finish, retellings of the movies, the entirety of the novelization featuring Hisagi, all of the Burn the Witch pseudo-sequel, and even brand new, extremely lengthy what-if stories. All of the content is there, and I'm pretty sure you don't have to spend anything to access any of it. So in terms of bang for your buck, the only thing you spend is your time, but in return you get lots of Bleach. Perhaps the most content you can find in any Bleach video game. Actually, no, it most certainly is. I can't speak for how its gacha aspects work or what the pricing is like, because I don't typically play these sorts of games. If you play Brave Souls for free, the only limitation is the energy system, which in this game takes the form of tickets. They regenerate up to 50, but starting the game one evening and doing a few small orders already had well over 150 to play with off the bat. It's worth checking this one out, especially if it launches with achievements on Xbox. From what I can see, it has incredibly easy trophies on PlayStation, and I suspect it'll be easy to fully complete on Xbox as well.
Editing ERB here. Yeah, I just looked it up. 8 to 10 hours, 3 out of 10 difficulty. I might spend a couple of afternoons and get the 1000G, I think. It's kind of tempting.
I give this game a D tier rating, because even though it has a massive amount of content, it is let down by the gameplay being dull, and the game itself being simply a mobile game ported to PC and console. Like, After a few moments, you realize what you're playing is extremely generic with little actual substance. It does a good job of capturing the franchise's feel and story, but really does gloss over a lot of the details for the sake of covering wide but not deep. As Jub8891 once put it, Bleach Brave Souls is Bleach for busy people. If you're not really bothered by its pace, or you want to kill an afternoon reminiscing over Bleach, give Brave Souls a try. There's a reason it's stuck around as long as it has, when most other anime mobile games crumble after a few years. As per usual with these lists, I start writing, recording, and editing the video, and a new game is announced or shown. Let's do something fun. Let's jump forward to next year. Whoa, a new Bleach game is coming out, Rebirth of Souls. This is a one-on-one arena fighter being developed by Tamsoft and published by Bandai Namco for Xbox, PlayStation, and PC.
Editing ERB here. So much news has come out about this game in the past couple of weeks that what you're about to hear is a very out-of-date impression of what the game is going to be like. Enjoy!
So we will be giving Bleach Rebirth of Souls a tentative placement, based on what has currently been shown and revealed about the game. And as I'm recording this, I can tell you now this information that I've written here is out of date. More stuff has been revealed, but I can't be bothered to rewrite this. So I'm not gonna... Yeah! The presentation of the reveal trailer is violently rude and obnoxious, embodying the punk vibes of Bleach perfectly. It starts at the beginning with Ichigo receiving his soul powers and features the color scheme and design ethos of the Thousand Year Blood War anime. Fishbone and Grand Fisher are featured quite prominently in the trailer, which has me excited at the prospect of the good old boy being playable for once. It also means that there's a good chance we'll get to fight Acid Wire, the hollow that was formerly Orihime's brother Sora. Judging from the characters shown in the trailer, Rebirth of Souls may only end up going to the end of the third season, as I didn't spot any of the Arrancar or Vizards when scrubbing through, but they may well be revealed later. And actually I think they were, since I wrote this. However, Urahara is shown using Shibari, which isn't shown in the manga until much later, so who knows, maybe they're just playing their cards very close to their chest, in terms of what's been shown so far. Even when scrubbing through the trailer frame by frame for clues, there isn't much to go on. But they knew I'd look. They knew I would. It's what us Bleach fans do. Being developed by Tamsoft, who have previously worked on Muso-likes such as Gintama Rumble and Hyperdimension Neptunia U, as well as more standard hack-and-slash titles such as Senran Kagura and One Chanbara, I have every confidence that this will be extremely fun to play. With a single-player campaign, as well as local and online two-player multiplayer, Rebirth of Souls looks like it's going to be a tight game. From the trailer alone, I'm pretty confident that this will be at least A tier, so we will be tentatively placing it there. I am very, very excited for this game. So let's recap the list. F tier, games I refuse to play, ever again. All by its lonesome, Kurenai ni Somaru Soul Society. Harsh, maybe. Be honest, I just don't have the patience for this one. I will give the first-person perspective some credit, as something unusual when it comes to Game Boy Advance titles, but I simply don't have any desire to return to this. In the E tier, you'll find games that I might be convinced to return to, given the stars align in the right way or something, I don't know. Just 2 games here. At the bottom of E, we have Third Phantom, the molasses slow strategy RPG with a non-canon story featuring recolored OCs. It isn't for me. And the crowning jewel of E tier, Shattered Blade. Or Broken Blade. Where Polygon Magic took their somewhat decently average GameCube game and slapped on motion controls that hampered its shot at greatness. In D tier, Bleach games that do the bare minimum to satisfy me. They are far from being easy recommendations, but I can see why other players would get more out of them than I do. At the bottom of D tier is Jump Force, a game that's only real sin is being tailored for an audience that didn't particularly want it, which unfortunately bleeds into every aspect of the game. Jump Superstars is next. Not a bad game by any means, but definitely a bad Bleach game, which is how we must treat it for this list. Just above that, 4th Flamebringer. A little bit messy, like it was cobbled together from what Dimps had laying around. Just above that, J-Star's Victory Versus is not a particularly good Bleach game in terms of character representation. Maybe one day we'll look at it as a Jump game specifically, in which case it may go into a higher tier, like it ultimately deserves. Second best of D tier is Tasogare ni Mamieru Shinigami, with strange unlockable character choices, cut-in FMVs for special moves, and just solid combat with no Wii remote in sight. And the crowning jewel of D tier, Brave Soul, which finds itself at the top of D tier based on its content alone. Otherwise I wouldn't give a console port of a mobile game any of my time. C tier. Now these are the games that I played and enjoyed, though they don't have the compelling drawing power to keep me playing for whatever reason. Be it the language barrier, a lack of content, or some kind of oversight. At the bottom of C tier we have Jump Ultimate Stars. Again, this is a poor Bleach game, which is why it ranks so low here. Next up, Erabareshi Tamashii. I would like to put more time into this one, but I just can't justify putting that time into it. But who knows, could happen. Next up, Soul Carnival 2, which put me off in the initial stages by starting at the very beginning of Bleach. When I'm in the mood to explore Bleach from the beginning again, it might make a good companion to the show. Speaking of companions to the first season, we have the very first Heat the Soul. A small roster hurts this one, along with the ridiculous unlock conditions. Download a save file with everything unlocked, and give this a go if it interests you. Just above that, Blade of Fate. This would be higher if the game was a little bit less antagonistic towards the player, though that is refreshing in its own way. Second best of C tier is the first Soul Carnival, with deep cut references and a good challenging difficulty level. The art style really gives you a false impression of the game. It may look childish, but no, this is a satisfying little challenge. And at the top of C tier, a game that is only held back by its language barrier, Hanatareshi Yabou. Hoping out for a fan translation or better tools, so I can thoroughly enjoy this one. B tier. Games that are incredibly easy to recommend to Bleach fans, but might be a little bit too difficult for non-Bleach fans to get into. But definitely worth a try. Just 4 games here. Blade Battlers, a Power Stone style multiplayer fighting game with 4-player battles, absurd unlockables and tons of charm, held back by a few poor design decisions. Bleach Heat the Soul 2, missing some of the fun what-if scenarios from the first game, but makes up for it with fun characters and the return of Block-On. In second place, Heat the Soul 4, a great game that ultimately takes away from the features that made Bleach Heat the Soul 3 so memorable. And the crowning jewel of B tier, Dark Souls. Funny name aside, this fighting game improves upon Blade of Fate in a lot of ways, and is just a great jumping in point for non-Bleach fans. A tier. These are the games I would recommend immediately to anyone, Bleach fan or not. These games play great, have tons of replay value, and hold an important place in my heart and memories. At the bottom of A tier, Heat the Soul 5. The tag team character master mode is tons of fun, and unlocking everything becomes addicting to the point where you can't put the PSP down. Next, Heat the Soul 7. Almost overloaded with content, it ties a nice bow on the franchise and gives us a satisfying conclusion to the fight between Ichigo and Aizen. Next, Blade Battlers 2nd. Huge improvement upon the first Blade Battlers with a solid multiplayer mode and fantastic what-if stories. Tentatively placed in A tier, Rebirth of Souls. Based on what we've seen, I'm fairly confident this is going to be a high A tier. In second place, Heat the Soul 6, with its huge story mode and 74 playable characters. Heat the Soul 6 remains a solid recommendation for all PSP owners. And at the top of A tier, Bleach vs. Crusade. While its placement is in part affected by my own fond memories of drunken battles, Versus Crusade drops you into one of the most battle-heavy parts of Bleach and gives you a ton of great characters to play as, in a compelling arena fighter. And here we have the S tier. These are the best of the best, just 2 games here. It was difficult picking my real favourite out of the 2 of them. They're both the crowning jewel of S tier, but one has to be the best. So in second place, Soul Resurrection. With over 100 hours of gameplay for completionists to sink their teeth into. Classic Dynasty Warrior style hack and slash action that has not aged a day. Fully voiced in Japanese and English, and utterly fantastic presentation and production values. Of course it's in the S tier, that's where it belongs. And the absolute crowning jewel, Heat the Soul 3. The perfect jumping in point, mechanics that make sense, no soul types, tag teams or transformation guff. A solid game with a fantastic single player mode and a large story to play through too. Super smooth gameplay, still fairly cheap to get hold of secondhand. This is a must for all PSP owners. Heat the Soul 3 is my absolute favourite Bleach game of the lot, and incredibly satisfying to play through in full. And that's the list. What do you think? Drop me a comment, because I'm lonely. Also, any ideas on what franchises to tackle next? I'm always open to suggestions. Drop it in the comments. No, seriously, interact. That'd be great. I am Escape Room British, and you've been watching the Bleach tier list. Until next time! If we live that long.